Hey students, the bell rang. Time for class.
That's right.
Hey, we want to welcome you to this week's session. I believe it's week 6 for Worship Lab. And it's called Corporate Worship. It's determined by your personal worship. And I wrote under my notes here, Leadership 101. Now, I got to be honest with you. This was one of those topics that it kind of looked good on paper, and we said it all these years to people. Oh, your corporate worship is determined by the time of your personal worship. But when I started trying to put kind of notes to this outline, it was a little bit harder than what I thought.
Put into words your heart.
My heart. So, and so I'm just going to read from the notes a little bit because I think you'll be blessed by it. It says, why? Don't we all know that if we're comfortable telling the Lord how much we love Him in private, certainly it will be easier to do it in front of people? Well, the short answer is yes, but why? Why must we be worshipers when no one is looking? Now, that's the question. In previous weeks, we've covered topics from holiness to humility, and those are very important things in the life of the worshiper. But to worship privately, to practice a lifestyle of worship when no one is watching. Why is that so necessary? We believe there are some key components you will need that will give you the ability to be a great leader. Have you ever heard someone say he or she is a born leader? Well, that sounds great, but I promise you it's not true. True leaders are born over years in the crucible of severe troubles, trials, and pain. Think about some of the greats of the Bible, such as Moses or King David or Paul. Before they were ever leaders, their personal walk and times with the Lord were established first privately and then corporately.
Right.
Okay, class, so here is the mathematical equation, and Joe knows how I hate math, so crazy. The mathematical equation for us to study this week. Practice, and in parentheses there, discipline, plus being teachable, willing to change or grow, equals authority to speak and to be heard. All right, so
Every one of us want authority. You know, we want to walk in that place of authority, but really and truly it takes the discipline and the willingness to change.
yeah.
And none of us like to do that.
And that in your personal prayer time, in your personal worship time, those are the things that are happening that give you the ability.
Because the Lord comes to us and He begins to bring about those changes in our life, and those things that He fashions in that private place, then as we are under pressure, that's actually what comes out. It's just like with any person who plays a sport, you know.
I'm fixing to get into all that.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's just powerful that we want those things to whenever the pressure's on, we want the right things to come out.
That's
so
right.
That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. No. It's very good. It's very good. It's scary how we think alike sometimes. All right, so number one, let's start with number one, practice or discipline. Practice and discipline are not popular calls for prayer lines, right? I bet you have not seen your pastor call for the practice. How many of you want to practice more? How many of you want discipline? Get up here, I'm going to lay hands on you. So those are not popular calls. No. But spiritual and physical disciplines are necessary. And I talked about athletes, which you're talking about there. Whether gymnasts, golfers, football players, or whatever your favorite sport is, the personal discipline to constant and consistent training is a big key to their success.
Yeah. And you know, it's really funny. One of the great, I love to play golf. And Tiger Woods has changed his swing, I think twice or 3 times. He started off with what he did with his father, and then in the middle of that he took on a new coach, and then after that again took on another new coach, and each one of those coaches, they worked on certain aspects of his swing so that it could be reproduced over and over. So when the pressure came, then he would not crumble under pressure and go back into old habits. And that's what really happens in that place of practice. Whenever you're playing on a Sunday morning and you're moving from song to song, you don't have to think about the chords and everything else. Your hands automatically go to the right positions. As a vocalist, you've learned to breathe correctly and everything else. You won't run out of air. You'll be able to do what you've been called to do.
I always think it's funny, you know, because I've had a million moms come and say, I want my daughter to play just like you, or I want my son to play just like you. And they have no idea.
Yeah.
The years. They have
Right.
no idea. Somebody Facebooked me the other night and said, if I take the piano class, are you guaranteeing that I'm going to play like you? And it was kind of tongue in cheek, and
Yeah.
it was kind of funny,
We all he.
Yeah. But the fact is, nobody really wants to spend the years of discipline, and it's in the practice times that nobody ever saw.
That's right.
It was the early mornings that I would get up early, before any of the other kids my age would be up, and I was in there at the piano and I was playing chords. And my mother and dad would just say, you know what, you go in there and practice, and we'll do this, that, or the other. So there was such a commitment instilled in me as a young person, in order to do what I wanted to do. It was just going to require discipline.
And to flow like we flow. A lot of people say, I wish we could flow like you do at our church, and this, that, and the other. But what they don't realize is the many times during lunch that I would come home from the office there at the church, and we would spend our lunch time just going from song to song, learning the different songs for whatever type of ministry that you wanting to be able to flow in.
That's true.
It takes the practice.
The Bible tells us that as a young boy, David could run as fast as a deer. He could put 2 stones within a hair's breadth with a slingshot. I was asking Joe.
It's close.
That's close, isn't it? Most of his talents.
That's accurate.
That is accurate. Most of his talents and abilities were forged in the field as he spent time with his father's sheep. So when he went to check on his brothers who were supposed to be fighting the Philistines, and they were holed up in fear of Goliath, David stepped forward to defeat the giant that had taunted the children of Israel. And, nobody had to tell him how to use that slingshot. I mean, it was on the backside. It was in the pasture. It was in the field. The hours that he spent with the sheep, he honed that gift. And there was a discipline in his life.
So true.
So it's not something that a lot of us like to talk about. And it's not something that, everybody wants to do the quick thing. And I always find it's always funny, because in the fall of the year, everybody wants to start. Everybody wants to start. I want to start school, or I want to start a class, or at the first of the year, I'm going to start the gym. And I'm here to tell you, I'm the world's worst. I can start something, but the discipline that it takes to stay with it, it's just not, it's
not easy.
It's not easy. Discipline
it's not easy.
And practice is not easy.
That's right.
I believe David was a personal worshiper before he was ever called to lead a nation.
Absolutely.
Look at Psalm 63. I love this cry of David's heart. He says, "Oh God, you are my God. Early will I seek you." That doesn't sound to me like he was just seeking him in church. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. So I have looked for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory, because your loving kindness is better than life. My lips shall praise you. Thus I will bless you while I live. I will lift up my hands in your name. I can just, these are rituals that David did when no one was looking. He practiced lifting up his hands. He practiced lifting up his voice. I mean, I just know that the cries of his heart here, these were things that he had done in private with no one. No one even heard him sing. No one even heard him play. But it was just in those times of intimacy with just him and the Lord. He says, my soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness, and my mouth shall praise you with joyful lips. Look at this. When I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watches. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It was in the night. It was in the middle of the night. I believe David probably got some of his greatest songs. It was in those times when it was just David and the Lord. Because you have been my help, therefore in the shadow of your wings I will rejoice. So I just know David was a personal worshiper before he was ever called to lead a nation. And that's why I think we say your corporate ability, your corporate leading, your worship for more than one is just determined by the time that you spend in the personal disciplines and practices of worship. One of the catchphrases that we see in the charismatic church today, and Joe just spoke of this, is flow. Most every pastor we know where they are looking for musicians and singers that flow. Students, can I tell you that the ability to flow musically or in any area comes from the discipline of doing the basics over and over and over again. It takes discipline to study. It takes discipline to practice your instrument.
Right.
It takes discipline to not go to the places that your friends go.
Right.
It takes discipline to not watch what others watch. It takes discipline to pray. It takes discipline to write songs.
Right.
Do you see my point? If you can discipline yourself now to a personal worship and prayer life, when the heat comes, and it will come,
it will.
what's already in you will come out.
That's right.
Just exactly what you were saying
we
a
were
while ago.
Yeah, yes.
And when you stand to sing, preach, teach, what's been put in you in the personal disciplines of worship and prayer will flow out of you as His super touches your natural. There's really nothing like it on the planet.
Powerful, powerful.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, to practice His presence. You know, that's one of
We
the
say that a lot.
catchphrases that we use is to practice His presence. Because
That's what we're doing.
one day we're going to stand before Him, and I want to have practiced what I'm going to get to do forever.
Right.
You know,
You don't want to get
know
there
it.
and not.
And
know.
because what I've done on this earth, it's going to be so familiar. It's going to be in a totally different realm and a totally different level. But you know, we just cherish, okay, the opportunity to press in, and so what we do in the corporate realm is very precious to us because we have had those intimate times in the private realm.
Amen. Amen. All right. Number 2. Are you ready for this? Be teachable. Be teachable. Be willing to change and to grow.
Yeah.
Time or space will allow me to cover the scriptures about being teachable, but have you read Proverbs lately? These wise sayings from Solomon mostly deal with gaining knowledge and wisdom through understanding. I always like Pastor Joe. He always says he's ever learning, because if he's not learning, he's dead. And we are all a work in progress. Therefore, we must realize that we don't know everything. As long as we stay humble and teachable, the sky's the limit.
That's right.
Again, all of the Proverbs are excellent, but Proverbs 3 is probably one of my favorites and talks about the Lord bringing correction to us. He says in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 1, "My child, never forget the things I have taught you. Store my commands in your heart. If you do this, you will live many years and your life will be satisfying. Never let loyalty and kindness leave you. Tie them around your neck as a reminder. Write them deep within your heart.
Wow.
Then you will find favor with both God and people, and you will earn a good reputation. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you what path to take. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Then you will have healing for your body, strength for your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce. Then He will fill your barns with grain, and your vats will overflow with good wine."
Yes.
And I like verse 11. "My child, don't reject the Lord's discipline, and don't be upset when He corrects you. For the Lord corrects those He loves, just as the father corrects a child in whom He delights." You know, I think about my children. I think about my grandchildren. I don't correct them because I'm mad at them.
Yeah.
I don't correct them because I don't like them or I'm displeased with them. I correct them because I know their potential.
There you go.
We correct them because we know their potential. And we want to make sure that as we instruct and as we watch them grow, that we've done our part to give them every tool in the tool belt
Right.
to succeed. And the Lord does us just that way.
Right.
And I don't know why, but as musicians sometimes, it's hard for us to be teachable. It's hard for us to be willing to change or grow.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
why that
I mean,
is.
you know, what good would it be for us to come together and someone to know that we're playing the wrong chord, and because it gives a dissonant sound. But the more that we can be teachable and they can teach us how to hear the right chords, how to hear the right sounds, then we can duplicate that and transition that to the next generation.
Right.
And really, that's what being teachable is all about. Is that it's not just for me,
Right.
but it's for the next generation. And if we're doing our part, then every generation should be better singers,
Right.
better musicians.
Right.
And believe it or not, we're seeing that in our kids and friends of ours, that they are second and third generation musicians.
Mm-hmm.
That as you go further down the line, these kids that are coming behind us are just hearing things that are just amazing.
I mean, my nieces and nephews are writing music right now that are, it's just amazing.
And their friends. It's awesome because of this one principle right here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the being teachable.
Being teachable.
You know.
I think it's a key element that a lot of people miss out. And you think, well, what does it have to do with my personal worship? Because I think being teachable and making adjustments and allowing the Lord to bring correction to you in the private time will keep you from, and I said in my notes, will keep the wheels from coming off publicly.
That's right.
You know, we have seen, I can't even tell you the number of ministers and musicians and entertainers, and I mean, you know, because they don't make the adjustments privately.
That's right.
I mean, their whole life is exposed, and I mean, it's horrible.
You know, the thing that God gave them to be a blessing to them. Okay, maybe it was a book on whatever, and the exact thing that God gave them as a blessing, really. Here's the key, was really for them personally first. Okay?
It was to bring discipline in their life.
And they carried it to the world. And the world went, oh my goodness.
This is amazing.
This is amazing. This will revolutionize my life. And will revolutionize the kingdom. And they went, oh.
Yeah.
They're going to use my, so we're going to have these things and we're going to do this, that, and the other.
They branded and built.
Branded and built all around it. But in their own personal life, they never settled certain issues in their private life. So once the pressure came and the real cares of life began to come around that, and they were exalted, these disciplines that God used to really be a blessing to the world really were their downfall because they weren't disciplined.
It's true. It's true.
Sad.
So I mean, you know, I just think these two things are so key: that discipline, the practice, the basics of doing the you know, worshiping when nobody watches you, singing when nobody hears you, but just you and the Lord. You know, instill in your heart, instill in your life that practice of prayer, of Bible study, of that practice of coming to, you know, to the house of the Lord, and being in the prayer times that are called. Those disciplines that you instill in your life when you're not on the platform. And then that remaining teachable, being willing to change, being willing to take correction, being humbling yourselves, as we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, so that people that love you can speak into your life. Right. Those two keys, I really believe, in the private realm, really give you, which is number 3,
that's right,
the authority. That's our number 3 there, authority. And authority, one of the definitions is the power to affect change. I wrote in parentheses there, authority is to speak and be heard. And I mean, listen, let me tell you what, a lot of people today think they have authority and they have no authority. Because there's just all kind of people talking, but nobody's listening. I'm a fan of social media, and I use social media to let people know what's going on, where we're going to be, and promoting the school and things like that. But oh my goodness, I have some Facebook friends. None of you guys, promise you, none of y'all. But I do have a few Facebook friends that they make Facebook their pulpit. And brother, they are preaching and judgment and all this kind of stuff. And you look down and it's like nobody comments. It's like people talking, but nobody's listening. That's not godly authority. Godly authority, spiritual authority, corporate if you will. Corporate worship.
You can call it corporate leadership or ministerial leadership.
Yeah.
You know, how do you know you're a leader? Everybody wants to be a leader. Everybody's calling themselves apostle this, and
they got to have a title.
Got to have a title.
Yeah.
How do you know that you're a leader? And the equation's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Who's following?
Right. That's a Cruzism. That's a Cruzism there. Before you can call yourselves leaders, there better be someone following. Your authority to lead is an overflow. Okay? I want you to get this.
Yeah.
Your authority to lead, to speak and to be heard, is an overflow of your personal disciplines and personal growth.
Yeah, can I stop there just a second? We need to, I just wanted to say one simple thing. You know, we earn the right to speak into people's lives. You can't demand that. You know, respect is earned, we say. Respect is earned, then honor's given. And, a lot of people out there talking and nobody's listening. And you know, we've all been known to say things and to get on our soapbox. But really and truly, when you see this, our true authority to have a voice really doesn't come from our giftedness. It comes from the anointing of heaven, the sound of heaven on our voice, and on our what God's called us to do. And so that's where
that is in the practice, in the discipline.
Oh yeah.
When no one sees,
that's
and
right.
Just being willing to be teachable.
Hey, let me just say it like this: whenever Samuel was looking for a king for Israel, you know, Jesse had all the brothers, and he said, "Do you have one more brother?"
Jesse had all the boys.
Yeah. And Samuel said, "Do you have one other brother somewhere, or one other son somewhere or something?" He said, "Oh yeah, got this one back over here on the backside. You know, he's just a little boy.
He's just the youngest.
He's out there." He said, "Can I see him?" You know, and that's really the way it is. You know, God, sometimes it's not the ones that are the most vocal and the ones that are always out there in the front, the one you would think. It's not always the one you would think.
That's right.
It's the one.
In fact, many times it's not.
That's right.
It's the one you would least expect.
You would least expect that God really uses.
So we've kind of learned through the years, because, you know, we've had worship teams and we were pastors over this and that and the other. And I love Pastor Joey. He always says it's easy to, we put people in leadership sometimes that they probably didn't have any business being in leadership. No. But you know, sometimes when you're in small churches or you're desperate for people's help, you know, they'll say, our pastor in Dallas used to say, give them the feather test. In other words, put the feather in front of their nose, and if it moves, use them. Yeah. And sometimes small churches, you know, it's kind of like that. But really, Pastor Joe always says it's easy to hand someone a mic and hard to get that mic back.
It sure is.
So just really need to make sure that people who are set in places of leadership truly are leaders. One of the classes Pastor Joe teaches at Cruse Institute for the Arts is a leadership principles class called You the Leader. I've never actually sat in on that class, but I've read the notes, and it is a fun. This is a shameless plug for those of you who, you know, may want to come to the school next year and take a few more classes. His You the Leader by Phil Pringle is an amazing study, and it's going to take you a little bit more in depth as to what leadership is all about. But I want to read a quote from this book that Pastor Phil says here. He says, "The notion of leadership attracts the naive." In other words, everybody wants to lead.
Yeah.
Everybody. He says, "I have a nagging suspicion, no, I'm convinced that our picture of leadership is incomplete. My growing conviction is that leadership is actually built not on leading, but on fellowship. None of us has any authority on our own. All authority comes from God." We find that in Romans 13:1. Yeah. He provides the lines of command through which the authority flows from Him to us. Wow. When we are submitted to authority, we become empowered. I really loved that idea that true authority comes from fellowship. What makes people a really good leader is their ability to follow.
That's right.
You know, it really does. Yeah. So let me bring it home with this, and we'll wrap this teaching today. The discipline and personal growth that comes about in your personal time with the Lord will bring about a God-given authority in you. As you're called upon to lead others in a corporate setting, that authority will be recognized. You can stand in full confidence knowing your authority will point others to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ.
And that's what it's all about.
So your
That's what it's all
corporate
about.
worship truly is determined. That level of corporate worship, that ability, that authority to speak and be heard
Right.
is really determined by the discipline and the practice and that private time and that ability to teach and be willing to be teachable and be willing to grow and be corrected.
You know, for Pastor Becky and I, when we do our worship conferences and our revival meetings around the world, that's really the heart of a worshiping church. Is, you know, one can put 1,000 to flight, two can put 10,000 to flight. Whenever a church, a worshiping church, is coming every Sunday, every Wednesday, every time we come together, that we come together to worship, and that worship, that corporate worship, flows out of every one of those individual families of that church having a personal time with God every day.
It's true.
Couples, you know, it's sad that divorce is just as just as many families in the church get divorced as in the world. And it's because they're not worshiping families.
Right.
That they do not have that time in their house to where that private time of worship. And as that happens in their home, then God has an opportunity to work. And then when we bring that spirit into our corporate worship services, then there's an explosion. You have revival every week.
That's true.
You know, you have
That's
revival every week. And so that's really our heart, is that, you know, if you had a worshiping church, think about this as a worship pastor or worship leader. What if you stepped out every Sunday morning and instead of just the praise team being prayed up and you know, because this is what we do, this is our gift and our calling, then we prepare. You know, we're learning new songs, and just by the nature of teaching new classes and going into the Word to teach and prepare each week, your heart is made ready each week. So that personal time of preparation comes across in our public ministry.
That's right.
But wouldn't it be cool if churches were filled every Sunday with families that had that private time with God every day, just growing in God, so that when we came together on Sunday morning, there was this explosion of God's power. What an awesome experience.
You know, that
would be.
it's such a simple thought, really. It's just a simple equation, if you will, if you think of it in terms of that. But how it transcends not just, you know, you as a worship leader, but how it transcends you as a father. You know?
Yeah.
Your personal discipline of
prayer
and Bible reading and worship and your ability to change and to grow gives you the authority
To
and the
speak
voice
into
to
our kids'
speak
lives.
into your children's
Wow.
lives. So I mean,
And then how you know, to treat our wives and things like that.
yeah,
Again,
it transcends so many things, not just for worship leading, but that and like you were saying, you know, how much more powerful the corporate experience would be if people understood the power of the practice and the discipline and having worship on in their homes and in their cars and so that they don't have to come to church and like you have to be the cheerleader. I mean, you know, one of the toughest things for us is feeling like on Sunday morning you got to get up and be the cheerleader. It's like sometimes I've heard Joe say, just give me some pom-poms, you know, because that's what you feel like. It's like you got to raise the dead on Sunday morning. But how much more powerful would it be if everybody, you know, came
exactly.
with preparation
Yeah.
and that willingness to change and to grow and to move as the Lord instructs.
Awesome. It's powerful. I love it.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks for being a part of the classes. There's some wonderful things that we're sharing with you guys each week. And I pray you're grabbing a hold of these things, because these are things we've had to learn over a lifetime. And if you learn them now, just think how much further along you're going to be at this stage in your life than even where we are. You know, we're excited about it. So have a great week, and we'll see you at the webinar here this week. We love you very much.
Bless you,
Be
kids.
blessed.